What's up, guys? Down here at the shop with my latest toy that I picked up. Old school Bobcat 642 gas Ford motor. It's actually in respectable shape considering. Kind of gave it a really good look over. All the pins and everything in the hydraulic system seem to be pretty tight. You know, it needs a good cleaning and a little going over, but it's all here, all operational. All the controls, levers, everything's working well. I got it to start up on starting fluid, but it doesn't stay running, and I've diagnosed it down to the manual fuel pump. Well, a couple of issues actually. The first problem is it has very bad gas in it. Anybody that knows what the smell of bad gas is would understand. But I took the gas cap off on the side, and you can definitely smell it, as well as when I worked on the fuel system. It's garbage. So part of the muffler here. So what we've come down to, hopefully it's bright enough in here. I didn't bring a flashlight, but we've got a manual fuel pump right up there on the side of the motor, and I've checked. It's not no fuel is coming out. So this fuel system is pretty simple. It's got a line right there, and you see that little round unit with the two wires. That's a fuel shutoff. When you turn the key on, that allows the fuel to go through, which it is doing. That is working. And then the line goes across and feeds up into the fuel pump, and then the fuel pump right over to the carburetor here. And the fuel's getting to the fuel pump but not past it. So either the when these things get older, the cam lobe that actually drives the fuel pump, it's like a eccentric that just goes up and down as the camshaft spins, drives the fuel pump. Sometimes those can get worn out too, but I don't think that's the case. I think what happened is this machine sat for a good number of years, and the fuel went bad, especially if it's some of the newer fuel with the ethanol in it, and the diaphragm in the fuel pump just goes. So what I'm going to do is eliminate potential issues in the future, and I'm going to put in an electric fuel pump, which is a common practice to do on these. Not sure where I'm going to locate it, maybe right in here or up in there, but I've got everything that I need with me now. So my first plan is I'm going to hook the fuel pump up to the fuel line and turn the key on to allow the shutoff valve to open, and I want to drain with the electric pump all of the fuel that's in the tank. I have no idea what's in there. It could be full, it could be just a little bit, so we can get some fresh fuel in there. And then we're going to go ahead and install the electric fuel pump. All right, real quick, this is what I'm working with here. This is the pump that I got. It's just a low pressure, 1.5 to 4 psi. Which is basically the lowest they have is what you're going to want for a carbureted, or at least this carbureted motor. You don't want to have anything that's too high a pressure. It can just blow the pressure right past the needle and seat in the carburetor. So this is a unit I picked up at Napa. It's supposed to be a pretty good unit. Electric fuel pump, pretty simple connection. I'm going to run it through a relay that I also picked up here, AR170, and this is the 610 1051. So got some dielectric grease here. I'm going to get all these connections all lubed up so they don't go bad. And what we're going to do, the plan is to wire, we're going to wire it through the relay, and the relay is going to be triggered by the fuel shutoff that I mentioned earlier. There's a 12 volt that goes to that when you turn the key on, which opens that solenoid to allow the fuel to pass. So that's also a great time for the fuel pump to kick on, and will allow us to turn it on and off with the key switch. So that's going to be the trigger wire into our relay, and the relay will get the power straight from the battery to run the pump. Even though you could actually run this just right off of a switch, you don't really need a relay, but it's nice to have that in there anyways. So that's the plan, and I'll just kind of show you as I'm going the plan. So what I'm going to do right now is just tie into that. I'm going to find out which one of those is the positive with my test light, and I'm gonna tie in roughly this relay and get the pump working, just so I can hook this hose up and connect it to the tank and get that drained. So that's the plan right now. All right, I've got my rude crude setup right now. Just jumping wires right now just to get this pump activated to drain the fuel tank. I got my hose up there. I'm wired into our fuel shutoff, so all I got to do is jump power to right here, which would simulate putting the key on, which is going to activate our relay, which gets power from the battery and turns on our pump. And we should get, let's see if I can situate you guys better so you don't have to hold on. You should have a good view there, I think. And that should get us some fuel coming out of here. So let's see what we got. And there we go. As you can see, the color of that fuel, it's just nasty yellow. So we're going to go ahead and run this until the tank is empty. Get all this out of it. Which could be a while. I'm going to go ahead and just connect this up and step back for a little bit, give this some time to run. Like I said, I have no idea if the fuel gauge works in this or not. Alright, update, we're still pumping the old stuff out. The gas gauge does move, I just checked it. And according to what it's reading, it's pretty much empty, but I don't know if I trust that or not. We've got, looks like, probably about 2 gallons out so far. I don't think it's a very big tank. I think it's maybe a 8 or 10 gallon tank. So, ran out of battery power, so I'm jumping off the dump truck next door here. And I'm just gonna continue to let this run out until we get it empty. And we'll put some fresh fuel in and hook this pump up and see if we get it running. I'm hopeful. The only issue I see here is the muffler. This is the pipe, and there's a muffler that goes inside here, inside this. Actually, I think that is the muffler right there. It's rotted out. It's $130 online for a new one. But from when it started on ether earlier, it wasn't even really loud. It's surprising that the muffler's not even working well. I don't know if it's just this chamber or whatever quiets it down naturally or what, but we'll hopefully get it running soon. Alright, we got the pump wired up semi-temporarily. She's just zip tied onto those hydraulic lines for now. I'd like to mount it rigidly. Just want to make sure everything's working before I commit to that. I ran the positive and the negative straight to the pump rather than grounding it out on the chassis. It's going right to the battery just so I don't have any ground issues for now while I'm getting this running. So, and then we ran the line up and tied in right into the carburetor here. We've got the flow in the proper direction, or comes in from here through the filter into the pump and then out into the carburetor. I haven't tried it yet. This is the wiring I'm dealing with right now. I just got the relay sitting in here for now, plugged in. This is the ground for the relay. This is the feed power. And then the trigger wire for the relay is coming in off of here, off of the shut-off up there, like I mentioned earlier, 12 volt there. And this is the positive coming out of the relay, the switched, that's going over to the pump. And then this ground right here is just going right to the pump. So I can neaten all these wires up and loom them and make them, you know, more permanent than they are right now. But everything's connected tightly, so nothing's going to jiggle loose. The battery's not tied down yet, so if I do get it running, I'm not going to move it around a ton, but I'd like to get it off the trailer. So I have not put gas in it yet. I did finish draining the rest of the gas out. There was about 3.5, 4 gallons, I'd say, in it. And I have another 3 gallons of fresh fuel I'm going to put in it right now. So let's go ahead and get that going and see what happens. I'm going to try starting it without starting fluid at first. All right, go ahead and position you here and let's see what we get. See if we witness a fire. Wish me luck. Checking for leaks. Don't see any. Gonna give it some starting fluid. possibly have a carburetor issue where the float inside the carburetor is stuck closed and not letting fuel in. Pretty simple carburetor take off, so that'll be the next step if I can't get it running. But it also may have a bowl full of old nasty fuel that we got to work through too, so I'm going to try it a couple more times. All right, so what we got is just your typical carburetor here. I have looked it up. There is a little float bowl in here with a needle and seat to allow the fuel come in. I'll guarantee you that it's stuck, either closed or it's full of goop and the main jet is clogged and not allowing any fuel in. So a couple of bolts here, right here, and then there's one on the top here. And we're going to pull this carburetor off, disconnect the linkages, and bring it back to the garage and go through it, clean it up. Was hoping that it was just the fuel pump. So there's a good chance, well, I shouldn't say a good chance, because I wasn't getting any fuel when I turned it over, but there's a possibility that this fuel pump might have been all right and just the nasty fuel gummed up the carburetor, and that's why it's not running. So, all right, to be continued. I'm gonna try a quickie while I'm down here and see if can't open this bowl up and see what's going on. I tried blowing into the fuel inlet and I can't, so it's blocked. Like I said, I think there's a good chance that the float might be stuck. I'm just gonna open it up while we're here. I mean, really, to do this right, I should have a new gasket in here and a new gasket when I put it back on. But there's also the solenoid, appears to be also a shut-off or anti-kickback solenoid that may be bad, which could be closing off the fuel supply. But I'm gonna go ahead and open her up and see what she looks like inside. Pretty simple carburetor, no different than a lawnmower, really. Looks like just the 4 screws for the bowl. Zenith made in the USA carburetor. Interesting. TVs and carburetors, I guess. Not too bad. We do have a completely dry bowl, so there's no fuel getting in there, which explains why it's not running. Just some sediment. Interesting. Which means the float is probably stuck. The not the float, the needle and seat not allowing fuel to come in. You can see the needles right there. And it is in fact stuck. There it goes. How much you want to bet she runs now? Let's put this puppy back together and see what we get. Really should be cleaned out really good, but pretty sure we can get it running the way it is. Let's give it a shot. All right, I'm gonna bolt this puppy back in, right up there, and see if we can't still get it running today. Got our carb connected back up. Take two. Gonna try it without the starting fluid this time because I have a feeling she's gonna be getting fuel this time. Jumper cables. Here we go. Yeah. That main jet is definitely clogged. So I know it's getting fuel inside the bowl now because I heard it. I heard when the pump started running, you could hear no load for about 5 or 10 seconds, and then it started backing up. So the needle and seat is working now. So it could either be this shut off on the bottom, this little solenoid valve. I'm not sure. I think that cuts the flow of the fuel when you shut it off, and probably isn't reopening and allowing the fuel to come back in the main jet. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this carburetor back off, bring it back to the shop and give it a really good cleaning, and then we'll come back and hopefully finally get this thing running. All right, so we're back on the workbench here. Need a screwdriver for this. First thing I want to do is check this solenoid, which is designed to shut the fuel off. And basically it's just a 12 volt circuit. I've got a power supply here with my 12 volts and my ground, and we should hear a clicking noise if this works. I'll go ahead and put the ground on here, and let's see. So it sounds like she's working. You can see maybe right down in that hole right there, there's a little pin that should move, slide in and out. When we do this, let's see here, ground. Seems to be moving a little bit, but I don't think it's opening up the way it should. So what we're going to do is remove this, and we're going to start going through all these orifices and seeing what we can take out and clean, and guarantee you there's something stopping the flow of fuel in here somewhere. This is our jet, which meters the amount of fuel that goes in. Trying to be careful not to wreck this. Yep, she unscrews. See, there's a little needle valve here. Goes inside. So that needle goes right inside here and blocks the flow of fuel. All these passages are open. I'm starting to wonder if there isn't a ground issue. I never checked on the machine. I'm pretty sure I checked power here when we turned the key on, but I'm not sure if we checked for ground. So a good way will be to connect the test light right here, and then the wire that feeds this, turn the key on and make sure that we're getting power to energize the solenoid. because there's a good chance that's what's going on right now. I'm going to get some carburetor cleaner and spray through all these holes just to clean them up and then put this back together, but I don't see any issues here besides it being a little bit dirty. So let me go ahead and put this back together and see if we can't make this thing work. Real quick while we got this out, just want to show you the full actuation test on it. Got our negative here and then our positive here. And you can watch that plunger go in and out. So you can see there's nothing wrong with that. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with this Bobcat now. As I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if, as I mentioned earlier, the stock fuel pump might be fine on the machine. When I did turn it over to look for output, it was possible maybe I wasn't energizing the shutoff that's in the line for the fuel at the same time. I thought I did it through the key, but I might have just jumped the starter, because that was one of the first things I tried to see if, you know, with the motor turning over, if some fuel was pumping out of that. But if that solenoid was closed, it wouldn't get any fuel to pump out of it. So it's possible that might be fine. I don't mind that I put the fuel pump in anyhow, the electric one. It's just going to be more reliable. If you ever, you know, run it out of fuel, it's a lot quicker to fire it back up. So I am going to keep that in there regardless. My plan is to, once I get everything, you know, running properly, is to just throw a block off plate and remove the mechanical fuel pump from the side of the motor. For now, it's just going to sit there so the oil doesn't leak out of the side of the block. And, you know, it's going to be pumping air basically. But, you know, could probably do that for a long time before any mechanical failure or, you know, leak happens with it, for just the amount of oil it's holding in. But ideally it'd be nice just to eliminate it altogether off the side of the motor and just put a like I said, a little block off plate, and then you just use a couple of screws, the mounting screws, and close that off. So that's the plan with that. I do, like I said, I do want to keep the electric fuel pump regardless. It's nice to have. Nice consistent fuel pressure, I think, will help the machine run, you know, a little stronger anyways. But what I'm wondering this whole time is if, well, there's no doubt the gas was bad in the machine. You know, it had that horrible rancid smell. Was it to the point where it might have ran? Maybe, I don't know. I doubt it. I found, you know, anytime it's that bad and has that certain smell to it, you know, and it's real bad, the smell. It's not just like starting to get tainted. There's like different levels. You know, it's like, I've picked up cars before that have been sitting in a field for 20 years, and you open the gas cap and it's that smell in that machine. So it's definitely been a good amount of time that gas has sat in there and gone bad. So regardless, we've got fresh fuel in there. We've got the new fuel pump. We're getting fuel. When I just took the carburetor off last, there was fuel inside of the carburetor float bowl. So the needle and seat is opening, and it is allowing the fuel to get into the bowl like it should. I'm pretty sure at this point the only thing that was happening was there was either a blockage in the carburetor that I just cleaned out. But it didn't look that bad in there at all. I didn't really see anything obvious, but I still cleaned it all out anyways, and I made sure the solenoid worked. When I did test the solenoid before, I just checked for the 12 volts at the solenoid when the key was on, which I did have. Like I said, it was a possibility that there might have been, it needs a ground to complete that circuit. There might have been a there might not have been a good ground, or a ground at all. So I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to go down, put the carburetor back on. It's now raining. Just going to kind of get a little wet here. It shouldn't take me too long. I brought a couple more tools with me that'll make it easier to do the carburetor bolts, because I just had a pair of vice grips when I was down there earlier. So what I'm hoping to do is put that carburetor on, and I'm going to recheck for 12 volts at the solenoid, and also check ground at the solenoid by just running my test light and turning the key on. So if I don't have ground, I'm going to add a ground. If I don't have power now for whatever reason, I'm going to add power. I can just run the same power that is feeding the other shut-off solenoid if somehow the power got broken or interrupted. I don't think there's a fuse just for the fuel shut-off solenoid. There possibly could be, but for now, to get the machine up and running, I'm just gonna run my own power to that solenoid to make sure it's open. And there's no reason why that machine shouldn't be getting fuel now after that. So that's the plan. I'm heading back down to the shop right now, and we'll put the carburetor back on, and I'll put the camera back on when I test the circuit at the solenoid again to make sure that it's getting proper power and ground. And then we'll hopefully start her up one more time. All right, I got you guys tucked in out of the rain here, hopefully, in the truck. You're still getting wet. When I plugged the solenoid in with the key on, you could hear it clicking inside the carburetor, so I know it's working. I don't know if it was working before. I don't know what the situation is, but I'm going to hook the jumper cables up right now and give it another shot. See what we get. No starting fluid again. And give it a shot. Good news, she runs. Bad news, I've got no hydraulics at all. Supposedly this machine was worked fine until they couldn't get it started. So could be something simple, maybe something a big deal. It might be out of fluid, it might have a leak, I don't know. I know that there's a coupler that connects to the main pump for all the hydraulic operations, but I'm not getting bucket up and down. I'm not getting anything. Could even be a safety of some type, I don't know yet, but hopefully that's something simple that I'm going to look into now, but at least we got it running. So that'll conclude this video for now.